Time is running out for New York Giants left tackle Andrew Thomas to complete his ramp up from the PUP list. Will the star left tackle suit up for the Giants season opener? The clock is ticking, and Locked On Giants starts right now.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. I'm your host, Patricia Traina, credential member of the New York Giants media for Locked On, as well as for New York Giants on SI, which is where you can find all of my written work. And as always, we welcome on in our Blue Crew community members, our everydayers, our newcomers, and everybody in between. And we thank you so much for spending part of your day with us here on the Locked On Giants podcast. And if you've made us your first listener of the day, we appreciate that as well. And today's episode of Locked On Giants is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the promo code Locked On NFL to get $20 off your first purchase. All right, Giant fans, happy Friday to everybody. If you're watching this on Friday, on today's show, we're going to take a look at Andrew Thomas and the question of, is he going to be ready for week one? Now, I have some thoughts about that. There was also some new information that came out after Thursday's practice, which is the last practice, by the way, this week. The team is not practicing on Friday. They're going to have a nice long weekend before they return on Monday. So we'll talk about that in the first segment. Then in segment two, the Giants made something of a change, if you will, in practice. And it has to do with Jaxson Dart and the next step, the next phase in his development. So we'll talk about that and how that has a ripple down effect on the team's offense. So that'll be segment two. And then in segment three, we give our salute to the 5 men who were named Giant team captains. So we'll discuss that. There are some newcomers in the batch, and just a nice little theme that finally developed when it comes to the team captains. So all that is on today's Locked On Giants podcast. So thank you again for joining us. Okay, let's get into it. Andrew Thomas. Now, the big question is, will he be ready for week one? Folks, I hope I'm wrong, but I am going to go on record right now and say that I don't think he's going to be ready for week one. Why do I say that? A couple reasons. Besides the fact that Andrew Thomas has been hedging his bets going back to the spring as far as when he might be ready, a couple things came out. Number one, Thomas in his media scrum today on Thursday told reporters that so far he hasn't really done any team drills. He has done individual drills, but no team drills. All right. That's really not a good way to get into football shape because as I've said before on this program, the big challenge for Andrew Thomas at this point is getting into football shape. And in order to get into football shape, you got to practice in pads and you got to hit somebody. So if he's not hitting anybody in the team drills, how is he getting into football shape? I don't know that he is. And the Giants, as far as padded practices go, they had one on Wednesday. Thomas said he just did individuals. They're going to have one. I'm not sure which day next week. It might be Wednesday. I'm not sure if it's going to be Wednesday or Thursday, but they are going to have one next week. That's not a whole lot of time. And that creates a little bit of a dilemma, one that Thomas himself admitted, and that is the soreness that he feels after practice, is it good soreness from getting into football shape, or is it bad soreness because the foot is still a problem? So that's a big question that they have to answer, that he has to answer. What I think is going to happen with Andrew Thomas, I think he's going to not be ready for week one. I think you're going to see James Hudson at left tackle. Is there an outside chance that Thomas is ready for Dallas? Possibly. I would not be stunned if he doesn't make it back for Dallas. I think realistically, if I had to pick a date when he is going to return, I'm going to say week 3 when they host the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, there was another piece of information that came out about Andrew Thomas's odyssey, if you will. And this credit Dan Duggan of The Athletic because he thought enough to ask this question and got the answer. Andrew Thomas had another procedure done in April, in which he had the screw removed from his foot because apparently the screw was creating discomfort. That, if you will, kind of set things back a little bit for him. Because think about it. Initially, Andrew Thomas had the surgery, I think, in November. Then he went November, December, January, February, March, April, 5 months with the screw in his foot, had the screw removed. Now, is there you could probably say he had to start all over again. So that was kind of an eye opener. And another reason why I'm thinking Andrew Thomas is not necessarily going to be ready for week one. Now, the good news is I don't know that it's that big of a deal if he is not ready for week one. And I say that not out of disrespect to him or anything, but I think the Giants can beat the Commanders with or without him. I think they can beat Dallas, especially if Dallas doesn't move on Micah Parsons, which right now, as I record this, it doesn't seem to be anywhere close to being resolved. I think the Giants could theoretically get by with James Hudson if they had to for a couple of games. Now, I'm not saying that, that's the ideal scenario. You want Andrew Thomas in the lineup because there is a difference with him, especially in the run game when he is in there and when he is not in there. You also see a difference in the pass protection game in terms of sacks last year when he is in there and when he is not in there. But here's the reason that gives me a little bit of hope. Last year, we all know the Giant quarterbacks held on to the ball for infinity. This year, I don't think we're going to see the same problem from Russell Wilson or Jameis Winston if he ends up, having to play, or on the off chance that Jaxson Dart gets in there. I don't think we'll see the same problem. I think the emphasis is going to be, especially the first week or two, if Andrew Thomas is not in there, the emphasis is going to be on getting the ball out of the hand quickly, which could mean a lot of 3 and 5 step drops. I don't know if we'll see a whole lot of 7-step drops, but there are ways that you can kind of mitigate not having Andrew Thomas in there. And again, the coaches, Brian Daboll in particular, they have confidence in James Hudson III. He played the left tackle spot all summer long, going back to the spring. Was he on Andrew Thomas's level? No, I don't think we could say that because nobody is Andrew Thomas. But was he serviceable? He absolutely was. So if the Giants have to get by a week or two without Andrew Thomas, which is where I think it's headed, I think they can survive. All right. So we'll see. We'll get our first answers really as to where they are with Andrew Thomas next week. The first injury report comes out on Wednesday, and Brian Daboll will not be able to brush aside questions about injuries. So we'll get a better idea and a better feel for where things are headed with Andrew Thomas next week, as well as the other injured Giant. All right, Giant fans, coming up next, the Giants made a slight change in how they are practicing now that training camp is over. I'm going to talk about it and why it's so significant, and that's coming up right after this. Hey, Giant fans, are you still paying full price for gas? Stop leaving money behind. Get real cash back every time you fill up with the free Upside app. Simply download the free Upside app in the App Store or Google Play right now and start earning cash at the pump today. Use my limited time promo code TOUCHDOWN and get an extra 25 cents back per gallon on your first fill up. You could make up to $300 a year just from buying the gas you already need. At first, I thought it was too good to be true, but it's totally legit. Real people are getting paid just to make their daily commutes, and you can too. Plus, you can cash out anytime to your bank account, to PayPal, or get an e-gift card for Amazon and other brands. Don't let this offer drive on by. Download the free Upside app right now using my limited time promo code TOUCHDOWN for a limited time 25 cents per gallon bonus. Again, that promo code is TOUCHDOWN. Offers vary by user and location. Go to upside.com for terms and conditions. Hey, Giant fans, NFL season is back. And honestly, there's nothing better than being in the stadium surrounded by fans cheering on your team. But let's be honest, getting tickets can be a hassle. Between queues, login screens, and price jumping at checkout, it's frustrating. That's why you need to check out Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. Game Time is fast, easy, and backed by the Game Time guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included, so the price you see is the price you will pay. Just think you can score tickets to your desired events on your terms. See where your seats are. And the closer it gets to showtime, you stand to save even more. So go on and take the guesswork out of buying concert and show tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the promo code LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. All right, Giant fans, we have an important request before we get to segment 2 here. Locked On wants to hear from you. We've put together a survey to learn more about our listeners and make your favorite podcasts even better. This is your chance to tell us what you like, what you don't, and answer questions about our advertising. So go on to lockedonpodcast.com/survey to get started. Everyone who completes a survey will be entered for a chance to win one of 10 $100 gift cards from Amazon. Again, that's lockedonpodcast.com/survey. You can also find the link in the show notes. Thanks so much for helping us out. All right, Giant fans, let's get into segment 2 here on the Locked On Giants podcast. And I mentioned that the Giants have made kind of a little tweak, if you will, to how they are practicing in the regular season. And this is based on, a couple of days worth of practices. And I think this is something we're going to see moving forward. And that tweak has to do with rookie quarterback Jaxson Dart. Now, what was seen in Thursday's practice and also again in Wednesday's practice, head coach Brian Daboll, after the team went through their stretching and their individuals and whatnot, Daboll went off to a backfield to work with Jaxson Dart to continue to develop him. Meanwhile, leaving quarterbacks coach Shea Tierney to work with Jameis Winston and Russell Wilson. Why is that significant? Folks, Daboll is going to be hands-on with Dart this year. All right. Just because the preseason's over and we're probably not going to see Dart for a while, if at all, this year, Daboll's going to keep his hands in that pot. And rightfully so. Right. That was the quarterback that he handpicked. That's the quarterback that he is counting on to be the future of the franchise. And he's going to be actively involved. And I think part of the reason why Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston were so appealing to the Giants, dating back to when, they brought him in free agency. These are guys that have been there, done that, seen it all. So they don't need as much coaching as a rookie like Dart does. All right. So it makes all the sense in the world for Shea Tierney to work with Russell Wilson and with Jameis Winston while Daboll is off doing his thing with Dart. It's probably similar to what happened up in Buffalo when Daboll had Josh Allen that he was trying to develop. Now, along those lines, even though it hasn't been officially announced, I think we all know the answer to this. Mike Kafka is going to call the plays this year. All right. Again, the reason for that is twofold. You've got Wilson and Winston, two guys that if they need to change something, two guys that, you're not going to readily fool with disguises on defense and stuff like that. Those guys can function on their own out there. They can swim in the deep end of the pool. Dart cannot really just yet. Notwithstanding the great preseason he had, that was against vanilla defenses. So by Daboll handing that off, or handing it back, I should say, to Kafka, now they give Daboll, it gives Daboll an opportunity to stand there and not only manage the entire football team, but be available to Dart on the radio or whatever. Because, Dart's going to be listening in on the plays on the sideline. There's going to be resources there to help him with questions that might pop up, what they're seeing. Who knows? Maybe Daboll will even turn around after a play is called and test the kid right on the spot to continue that development of the rookie quarterback, to get him ready to ultimately play, whether it be in some mop-up snaps or down the line, who knows, maybe even start a game. So this change is different, like I said, and it's a good one. I like what they're doing with him. The development hasn't stopped. Obviously, it's never going to stop. I mean, as long as we're breathing, we're all going to learn, no matter what our profession is, but especially with Dart, he's going to need, at least initially, a little bit more hand holding than Winston and Wilson. So that was significant, I thought, because again, it's not something we have seen before. We didn't see it really with Daniel Jones or, any of the quarterbacks for that matter. And that just goes to show you how committed this team is to getting Jaxson Dart up to speed, to getting him ready so that he could step in when needed. Now, again, I don't think they want to have to play him this year, certainly not in a starting role. But as I have said on this program before, I do see a scenario where Dart, even though he'll be probably quarterback 3, it won't be a true quarterback 3. They'll probably leave that quarterback 2 spot kind of, ambiguous, if you will, to where maybe it'll be Winston, depending on the circumstances. Maybe it'll be Dart, depending on the circumstances. But I think in all likelihood, Dart is not going to necessarily be the emergency quarterback every single week. Because as I have said, the emergency quarterback cannot play unless the 2 guys in front of him can't go for whatever the reason. I think the Giants ultimately are going to want to leave that door open for Dart to come in and play if the opportunity presents itself. Now, ideally, the best situation for Dart in that case, let him come in during a blowout, ideally a Giants blowout. And I say that because the other team is going to be desperate to try and play catch up. Ergo, they're going to probably throw everything, including the kitchen sink, at whoever the quarterback is, especially if it's Dart. So it would be a really good learning situation, a good learning environment for the rookie if they can work it out in such a way that that type of scenario happens. Now, that's just my 2 cents, just my guess on what I think they're going to do, but just kind of based on how Dable has brought Dart along, that's the best way I think they can continue to get him ready, because there is no substitution for live reps. And the more they can get him, even if it's just, a little bit here, a little bit there to start, the more likely he's going to be ready, sooner than later. And who knows, depending on how the season goes, maybe they throw him in there at the end of the year. If I had to take a guess, you could probably say maybe after the bye week, which is late this year. But that's going to depend. Are the Giants still in the playoff hunt at that point? Is Russell Wilson playing well? Is he healthy? What's the scenario? So there's a lot of moving parts when it comes to, when potentially we might see Jaxson Dart as a starter. But this little shift with Brian Dable attaching himself to Dart's hip, which he did in the spring and he did in the summer and is continuing to do now that we're heading into fall, that's very telling about how they are looking to leave no stone unturned when it comes to Dart's development. So I like it. And let's see how it plays out. All right, coming up next, we're going to give a salute to the 5 captains named by the Giants. So some thoughts on that to close out the show. That's right after this. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the daily fantasy platform that lets you turn your football predictions into real rewards. The regular season is right around the corner, and college football is almost here as well. So whether you've got your eye on a big-name quarterback or a breakout running back, Prize Picks makes it easy to get in the game. Prize Picks is simple to play. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stats, projections, and if you get your picks right, you could cash in and win up to 2,000 times your money. I've used Prize Picks for a while now, and I love how simple it is to use. The Flex Play option is a total game changer. Even when one of your picks misses, you've still doubled your money. And Prize Picks puts their members first so that all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. So go on and download the Prize Picks app today and use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after your first $5 play. Prize Picks, run your game. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. I'm your host, Patricia Traina. And in this segment, we are saluting we're saluting the 5 captains named for the New York Giants. Now, this is kind of a cool lineup, in my opinion, and I'll tell you why in just a moment. But the 5 captains, for those who haven't heard, are Russell Wilson, quarterback, Brian Burns, outside linebacker, Darius Slayton, wide receiver, Dexter Lawrence, interior defensive lineman, and Bobby Okereke, inside linebacker. All right, so let's run down each one real quick, and then I'll tell you why this group is just so kind of cool. And I'll also address why there's no special teams captain for those wondering. All right, Russell Wilson, not a surprise. Usually the starting quarterback is a team captain, and he's voted automatically. Russell Wilson has been a team captain no matter where he's been in the NFL. The only exception was his rookie year when he was at Seattle, but otherwise he was a team captain from his second year onward with the Seahawks. Then when he went to Denver, he was a team captain. He was a captain last year with Pittsburgh, and now he's a captain with the Giants. All right, no surprise there. Sexy Dexy, come on. No surprise there either. I mean, he's only the best Giant player on defense. Probably on the whole team you can make the case for. So that was a no-brainer there. Bobby Okereke. Some people will think that's a surprise. I'm not as surprised by that one. And the reason why I'm not surprised is I know there was talk earlier in the year about the Giants having soured on Bobby Okereke. I'm not so sure that that was ever really a thing. I think maybe that was a result of some frustration over how the season went for Bobby Okereke. Because remember, in the beginning of the year, he struggled in Shane Bowen's defense, but he got better. And all things considered, given that Bobby Okereke did not play a full season last year because of that back injury he had, he still came pretty close to having over 100 tackles. I think he finished with 93, if I'm not mistaken. And I think in his last 5 games, he particularly picked it up, and where he had two of those last 5 games in which he had double-digit tackles. And I believe in those last 5, he also had at least 9 tackles. And they were all quality tackles. They weren't made, 20 yards down the field. They were made within, 7 yards of the line of scrimmage. So good on Bobby Okereke. Good leader and well respected by his teammates. Brian Burns. Now, Brian Burns finished last year with 8.5 sacks, which I believe was a half sack less than what Dexter Lawrence did. So Burns was in second place, but Brian Burns last year, the very picture of consistency and toughness and grit and resiliency. Burns was really banged up last year, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, I don't know how he got through the latter part of the season, knowing how banged up he was. But yet, he was one of 2 Giant players last year who did not miss a beat. He did not miss a snap. He refused to give in to his physical, boo-boos, if you will. Right? That's a leader, folks. And very well-deserved honor for Brian Burns, who came over in the trade last year from the Carolina Panthers and who has fit in so well with this Giants team. And I think, just looking at Brian Burns and his game and his demeanor and all that stuff, I can't help but think he would have fit in really, really nicely with the old Giant linebackers, the Harry Carsons, the Lawrence Taylors, the Carl Banks. I think Brian Burns would have fit in beautifully with that group. Okay, last but not least, Darius Slayton gets his first captainship ever. We're talking peewee, college, high school, any level. His first captainship ever. And I could not be happier for Darius Slayton. All right, this is a guy who, remember, not too long ago, like 3 years ago, he was a healthy scratch in Brian Dable's first year for the first game. He was asked to take pay cuts, right, or be cut. And what did Darius Slayton do? He just shut his mouth, put his head down, went to work. And he has developed into a stellar locker room leader, right? All the receivers, you ask any of those young receivers about Darius Slayton and the example he sets for them, and they will all tell you the same thing, that he is the gold standard. He has done a good job, in my opinion, following Sterling Shepard, who was for the longest time, he was the leader, if you will, of the receivers. So Darius Slayton, getting that honor, tremendous. I could not be happier for the man. And here's what's so cool about this collection of captains. All right. You've got two of the longest tenured Giants who are captains, Slayton and Dexter Lawrence. They both came in as 2019 draft picks. Technically, you could say Dexter Lawrence has been a Giant a little bit longer than Darius Slayton because Dexter Lawrence was a first round pick. Darius Slayton didn't come in until he was a fifth round pick. So I think he came in a couple of days after Dexter was selected. So Dexter's probably you can make a case that Dexter's the longest tenured Giant, followed by Slayton. But that's really cool, I think, because, for years, I always felt that Darius Slayton should receive some kind of acknowledgement as a leader. And, he got it. His teammates would talk about him as a leader. And, Darius was always like, well, the would be nice, but it's not, going to make or break me. I'm not going to cry if I don't have it. He finally got it, and it is so well deserved for him. So good on him. Now, you're probably wondering, in this list, not a single solitary special teamer was named. Whereas in the past, it was either Casey Kreider, the long snapper, or Graham Gano, the kicker. Brian Daboll changed up the voting process this year. I think they gave each player a chance to name 5 guys that they would vote for, and then I think they had to prioritize it. And with special teams, here's the thing. Kreider is solid, and he's always been there. You never had to really worry about Kreider. And I think a lot of Giant fans will say, oh, I don't even notice him, which means he's doing his job. Gano has had injury issues the last 2 years. And even though it looks like that he's kicked them and he's back to being the Graham Gano, the Mr. Automatic that he was prior to the injuries, you can't go back and kind of, give him that honor. Kind of like what would happen with Andrew Thomas, who was a team leader or a team captain last year and the year before that and dealt with injuries. Jamie Gillen, quiet guy. I don't know. I mean, I guess to an extent he's a leader, but he's kind of a quiet guy. I don't know how much he necessarily will speak up. He's just a punter, and I don't mean that disparagingly. I just mean that he's quiet. So I could see a scenario where the Giants maybe designate one special teams performer, and it doesn't have to be one of the specialists. It could be maybe a gunner. It could be a return specialist. It could be anybody who partakes in special teams and has a particularly good day. But, at the end of the day, the captains, you send them out for the coin toss. But it should be remembered that even though 5 guys are wearing the C on their chests, there are other leaders in that locker room, other voices that are well respected and are going to be heard when things are going well and when things are not going well. So I'm not too concerned that, certain guys may have gotten overlooked. But I have to say this collection of captains that the Giants voted on, really, really good selection. And, we'll see how it goes throughout the year. Hopefully what happened last year to the captains where they were getting injured or in Daniel Jones's case cut, hopefully that doesn't happen. But the Giants, they've got a lot of leadership in that locker room. I think that culture in the locker room is probably one of the strongest I have seen under the Brian Daboll era. So I'm excited. I'm really excited. We're less than 10 days in now before the start of the season. So a lot to talk about, a lot coming up. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is going to do it for this edition of Locked On Giants. Now, before we say goodbye, as always, thank you for spending part of your day with us here, or if you made us your first listen, we appreciate it. NFL fantasy draft season is here. So for your next listen, go find Locked On Fantasy Football podcast with our hosts, Vinnie Iyer and Michelle Magdziuk. Listen every day to prep your fantasy draft and become the most informed manager so that you can take home your league's trophy this season. Find Locked On Fantasy Football on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. All right, Giant fans, enjoy this last weekend without football of any kind, NFL football of any kind. And we on the Locked On Giants podcast will see you next week as the Giants start to get ready for their week 1 game against the Washington Commanders. Have a great weekend, everybody.